Millions of despairing men, women, and children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and sea to the far corners of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazi.
Those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place. A lot of people don't know what's going on. There's very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome, everyone, into Garden of Doom. And this episode, we are visiting again with one of our friends, a four-time guest now, Andrew Gough. So first of all, how are you doing, Andrew? What's going on?
Jeff, I'm doing great. It's really nice to be back on the show. Thank you.
Now, you still coming to us from England?
Absolutely. Central London.
Okay,
freezing, raining. I think winter will never end, but never mind.
Right, he's an expat, obviously. There's no British accent there, but he is in London and has been every time I've spoken to him on the show. So for those of you who don't know Andrew, I will first tell you the shows he's been on with us, and then I'm going to let him talk about his many projects, because he was like sort of famous in the paranormal world when we first met, but his star has risen. He's like a meteor, but going up. So he was on a show about the Hollow Earth and giants. He's affiliated with the Firmament Conference. That's how we came to become acquainted. And that show was very cleverly entitled Into the Great Wide Inner, unlike the Tom Petty song. And then we did a show on one of his passion projects. He recently did a TED Talk on it about the humanity's relationship with bees in symbology, idolatry, and mythologies, etc. It was called the Be All and End All. Again, B-E, very clever. I'm going to continue pointing out my cleverness. And then we did a show that was basically the real Da Vinci Code and about the Templars. And that started a Templar arc of shows, which included Arthur Farham and Gretchen Cornwell. And that show was called the Poussin Code, because Poussin was really more the influential artist involved than Da Vinci. So, again, so darn clever. But, Andrew, tell them a little bit about yourself and all of the projects and all the TV shows you've been on and all the channels you're on and all the exciting things you're doing.
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on. And I was recently on Ancient Aliens, talking about Malta and ancient Greece and some other subjects. Just finished filming a new series for, of all places, the Weather Channel. And it's going to be a really interesting show, because I don't want to spoil it, but you go into all these mysteries and you're going down these rabbit holes. It's some nefarious, sort of mysterious, esoteric source that caused the problem, or maybe some mafia thug. But in the end, it ends up being the weather. So
blame it on the rain.
Yeah, exactly. Some of the recent things I've finished that are in post-production, Mysteries of the Ancient Dead, In the Shadows, a series about secret societies. And I've done loads of stuff for Discovery Channel and History Channel. So unfortunately, if you turn any of those on, you'll be hard-pressed not to see me, which is unfortunate because you'll see my screaming face talking about something or other.
Don't be ridiculous. You're like the British George Clooney.
Well, I'll take it.
So, folks, I'm recording this on Thursday, March 23rd with Andrew, and this show is actually going to drop probably more sooner than most shows that I record this soon are. And the reason is because this coming weekend in my real time, not when you hear it, will be a show with another Nephilim anthropology participant, Luke Michael Ironside, who's also one of my favorite guests, and he's doing a show, or did it already, on linguistics and the 5 root races. And I'm recording on this Sunday with, I believe, the only six-time guest of Garden of Doom, Chris Ames, who's done the Norse mythology show, and he did the Gnostic Apocrypha and the Trinity Infinity, and among others. And we're going to do a proper show on Atlantis, mostly him. And so that show will air the following week. So you've already heard it, hopefully, but if not, you may want to go back. And although Atlantis is one of the root races under Luke's presentation, and Tartaria isn't, I think that most of us who are sort of in the supernatural, paranormal, esoteric, history, alternate history, hidden history, sort of 101 to 301 range, we don't really, we sort of put them all together. So I think I'll do Atlantis, and then Tartaria will follow that. And, maybe in the interim I'll find someone on Hyperborea or Ultima Thule or Lemuria proper. But if not, I'll get to those things eventually. But while I have you, Andrew, I just wanted to ask, do you know Mark Ollie? He was also on Ancient Aliens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've known Mark I've known of Mark for about 15 years, and I just met him for the first time at the Gaia conference, the Awakening conference last summer.
Yeah, he's also someone who's been on TV a lot, and he's been on the show a bunch of times. And I just recorded a show with him with the real Robin Hood, and then we went into Templars. I didn't know how much Templars were actually involved with the real story of Robin Hood. So that will also be coming, folks, but that probably will be a little bit in the future. And then I know he's got a book coming, and we're going to record with him again when closer to when his book comes out through Flying Disc Press. So anyway, Andrew's all over the place, and obviously we're going to talk about Tartaria. And Andrew and I were talking in pre-production that Tartaria, while it's very old, it's sort of new, gaining popularity and people following it and trying to learn about it. I think I might have first heard about it from PJ Black, who was on episode 50, I believe, or 52, where we talked about African mythology and the African Anunnaki and a whole bunch of other things. So you may want to check out that show. And that was a long time ago, and I knew a lot less then. But hopefully PJ will listen to the show because I know he was interested in Tartaria. Anyway, Andrew, please take it away. Aside from Tartaria being somewhere in either somewhere between Eurasia and Siberia, maybe all of it, and being supposedly a very advanced culture, almost like Asian Atlantis, that's about as much as I know.
Yeah, it's so interesting, this subject, because you rightfully say what Tartaria is an ancient culture that harvested free energy. It had an amazing architecture. It had dimensions to its buildings that suggest a much larger race occupied them. And then they just disappeared. And they disappeared in what has been popularized as a mud flood. So we can come on to all that, and the whole precept is that a lot of the things that we see, a lot of the things hidden in plain sight that we think, oh, that's an amazing building that was done 100 years ago. No, it was done a long time ago, and done by not aliens, but by a race that's no longer here because they have been reset and airbrushed. And if you think that sounds ridiculous and sensational. What have we just gone through in the past 24 months? The Great Reset. Build back better. Huh? Reset? What is it? What do you mean reset? So the whole concept of Tartaria, yes, it kind of, if you Google it and go to Wikipedia, it refers to this area sort of in Asia, bordering on, Russia and the Caspian Sea and China. But it's more of a global phenomena. And I'd like to come on to that. And as we discuss this, please, listeners, understand, if anyone tells you they're an expert on this subject, then, they're fibbing, right? Because it's one of these subjects. I don't know, Jeff, if you adhere to the, there's white hats and black hats, and there's, evil and good, and the white hats are kind of releasing information that has been hoodwinked from us for thousands of years. I believe that Tartaria is something that's kind of been released on the esoteric channels, the alternative channels, and people are just coming to terms with it.
Interesting. So what have they been releasing? So let's start with something really simple. Around when and I guess we'll have to go, BCE, obviously, around when, or it may even be so many that it's just you go into the hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of years ago, but around when was this culture supposed to be, what's its range? It's either its height, its fall, or whichever you can feel that you can estimate. And you have plenty of latitude of not being exactly right. As you said, there are no experts here.
Well, and this is where it gets interesting. So bear with me for a little while. There appears to have been a great reset in the early 19th century, and that appears to have been the last one. And I'll come on to that in a little more detail. And when we talk about history, what are we talking about? His story. So we're talking about his story that has covered up what appears to be a true lineage in history. And once again, the victors have written the history, and that's happened again and again and again. And when you do that, you airbrush the bits that you don't want people to know about in the future. So I'll come back to this at the end of our discussion, but I've always wondered, who is he?
Right.
Who is he?
Good question.
And so let that kind of knock around the back of your brain as we're going through this, and realize that as I'm talking about a reset that occurred in the early 19th century, please realize that there appears to have been an attempt at another reset as we speak. And they haven't disguised it. The global cabal, haven't disguised it. They've called it the Great Reset. They've called it Build Back Better. And I believe anyone who's ushered those words cannot be trusted, but that's just my opinion. This is not about politics. It's about, what have these people said? What have they written? They haven't tried to hide it. Depopulation has been an agenda. So has depopulation been an agenda in the past? It really appears to.
Sure, of course.
And so one of the things we've all experienced, but once someone shows it to you, you can't unsee it. You're walking down the street and you see an apartment building, lovely old apartment building. What is it? Maybe 100 years old, maybe 150 years old, and you marvel at it. But you don't really think about the fact that there's a basement level that has windows in it, and the windows are half covered with ground, and then the windows just disappear into the ground. So you never sort of stop and ask, well, why is that? Why is this building submerged underground like there's levels below? Why does photos of the renovation of the White House show levels going down 20, 30, 40 meters below the entrance to the White House? Yeah, there's tunnel systems down there, but this is the same architecture extended downward. And if you were to create a high rise today, you go down 3 or 4 meters, no more, for your base, and then you build up. But we're talking things that are many, many meters below existing buildings. And once you see those, you see them everywhere. And it becomes a very, very interesting subject as to how those buildings could have become, well, apparently buried in mud.
Right.
And, I would imagine that most of your listeners are probably on Telegram or on Rumble. If you're not, please go and Jeff can recommend some channels for you. I can recommend some channels for you, because if you Google Tartaria, you'll see some stuff on Wikipedia about an ancient race in Asia and that part of the world, and it's kind of nondescript, and you'll read a lot of really prominent magazines, Bloomberg, others, just making fun of the fact that there's this group of historians who are now questioning architecture like the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, that is just one of many examples that is just an incredibly audacious piece of architecture. And you think about when that was built. Okay, here's something that has like 37,000 cubic meters of limestone weighing 95 million kilograms. Took 12 years to build. Really? How did they transport the limestone? Because we have horse and carriages.
I don't know.
The first power tools are like 1889. First car is 1886. Photography is 1839 or thereabouts. And now in 1806, you create this absolutely audacious structure. And if you've ever stood beneath it and just looked up at the sculpture and the symmetry and the precision, there were no power tools. And it radiates from the Arc de Triomphe out into Paris in this real uniform sacred geometry.
Right. Wasn't it L'Enfant, the same architect or city planner, did DC as well?
Yeah. And these guys get attributed to having created that. And when you think about it, for me, I could understand how the pyramids may have been constructed more easily than the Arc de Triomphe or so many other ancient buildings, because you're talking horse and carriages. And the interesting thing is, when you look at the photos, the oldest photos of any city in the world that has these amazing architectural wonders with marble and incredible precision. Look at the roads. The roads are uneven, full of mud, dirt, surrounded by homes that are lopsided and derelict. And you start, when someone points it out to you, and apologies to your audience, because this is a really visual subject. And when you see these photographs, you're like, oh God, yeah, I've looked at that my entire life, and I've never asked the question why there's windows in the basement that are half covered, and how they could have built that at a time when there's no power tools or anything other than a horse to carry a ridiculous amount of stone and then carve it.
Well, Paris also has the necropolis that's several layers down as well. With they filled it with bones, but apparently the chambers were there for a long time.
Yeah, and it's every city on the planet. You go to Moscow and you St. Basil Cathedral, one of my favorite places that I've visited many times, and it's just this wondrous piece of art, and it was created in 1555. Really, thousands of red bricks and this very unique bent metal. Look at the photos. Again, photography is going to be, hundreds of years later, but St. Basil, all around it, there's equally as magnificent buildings, the Kremlin, stones throw away. But look at the grounds. It's all mud. It's all derelict dirt. You think a culture with the ability to create those edifices would also be able to pave a road or at least level one.
Sure. Do they call it St. Basil's there or Basil, or do they call it St. Vasily?
Yeah, it's a good question. For somebody who I've done maybe 500 episodes of network television, and I think thank God that there's somebody sitting in the studio at all times whose only job is to listen to what you say and make sure you don't say the wrong word. And just a quick detour. The one time that individual wasn't there in a shoot I was doing for NASA's Unexplained Files, I said nuclear. Now, the only person who's known and famous for saying nuclear, because it's supposed to be nuclear, it's 2 syllables, not 3, is Homer Simpson. So I have memes of Homer Simpson with my head on Homer Simpson sent to my Facebook, year after year after year, because I said nuclear. Because that chap in the studio wasn't there to tell me how to pronounce things. In case
nobody argues with Homer Simpson. That's just absurd. I mean, they've gotten so much history right on The Simpsons anyway. I mean, this is completely aside. It's just I know St. Petersburg, but I'm not sure if they call it St. Petersburg in Russia or Pietros or Pietro, or because if they call it St. Petersburg and St. Basil's, I mean, what a powerful statement about the influence over another language that you would name one of your biggest cities and one of your most famous structures, basically with the anglicized or the Latinized version of the name.
Yeah, absolutely. And without going off on a big detour, let's do a show sometime on The Simpsons, because that will get us into time travel. Right. Which I believe is real, and there's no way The Simpsons could have guessed at a lot of the things that have come true and some of the things that they're talking about. For instance, the firmament above our Earth, that sort of dome shape, watery substance that goes above Earth that every ancient civilization talks about and ties into Tartaria as well, was on a Simpsons episode, like so many other things that have come to be, real.
Well, deal. We can definitely do a show on The Simpsons and sort of the esoteric. Yes, that would be awesome. But don't think that means I'm going to forget about the peacock thing. And probably only you and I know what that means. But yeah, but don't book yourself for too many shows. But you can book yourself for as many as you like. Just don't think I'm going to forget the peacock.
Okay. And I agree about the peacock. I have a home in Turkey, and I've been all over the Syrian border and Iraqi border. Peacocks everywhere, and there's reasons for that. So that's something that deserves some attention. But speaking of attention, one of the things that your listeners will probably readily be able to picture, and if not, you can Google this, but San Francisco in the late 19th century, I think it was 1877, there's this photograph, incredible, massive city. It goes on, and it's like this panoramic, and it goes and covers the entire breadth of the city. And we know how big and sprawling San Francisco is. Now, hold that thought. And I think it was 1866. There were under 500 settlers. And it was growing rapidly because they just had the gold rush. Then all of a sudden, they had maybe 25,000 people there. When this photo was taken in 1877, they claim, one, there's 200,000 people, but the city is gargantuan. It's the same city with pretty much, with the exception of high rises, the same buildings with the same cathedrals and the same everything, except there's not a single person in sight. And from the shadows, you can tell it's midday, so it's not like a funny time. And these photos are from the historical record. They haven't been airbrushed. Where are the people?
Okay, so I guess you're going to answer that, or at least allude to an answer, and somehow that's going to be related to Tartaria.
Yeah, and so Tartaria was this culture that was able to harness the fact that there is a firmament over the earth. Richard Nye, who has the National Science Foundation funded television show in the U.S., he's got multiple PhDs. He has said the earth is a closed system. You cannot leave. There is no place to go. Forget the moon landing. Never happened. If you want for a moment to think about and get your head around the fact that how could the government conceal the truth from us? How could history books not tell us the truth? If you need to wrestle with that concept, look no further than NASA, which was created in 1959, which was created on the back of the fact that the Russians, and this has just come out, declassified documents about what Russia was doing during the Cold War, stacks of documents. And in those documents are details about the firmament. Russians were photographing the firmament, measuring its temperature. We're in a snow globe. The snow globes you collect when you're a kid and you shake them and they snow, and that's what Earth is. And whether you want to believe that or not, NASA clearly understands it. And in 1959, you have the Antarctica Treaty. You create NASA. And then you have Stanley Kubrick talking to Arthur C. Clarke in the early 60s. And then, boom, Stanley Kubrick does 2001 Space Odyssey. Then, boom, NASA goes and makes moon missions from 68 to 72. But today they'll tell you they've lost that technology and they've lost all the footage of those missions. Imagine that. Lost the technology. And so it's absolute rubbish. So in our own lifetime, there is history being airbrushed. And what we're saying is there have been many resets. And the last one was, according to the evidence, in the early 19th century. And how did it happen? Where did the people go? It's an excellent question. And there's as many questions as there are potential answers to this mystery. But soil liquefaction, where solid ground can become liquefied, whether it's an earthquake or, wait for it, a change in frequency.
Ooh.
which is what Tesla always said. If you want to understand the secrets of the universe, it's frequency. And we have to look no further than HAARP in Alaska and the weather wars, which, Kennedy was talking about the ability to manipulate the weather. So what if you could and always had the ability to manipulate frequency and cause this liquefaction, which causes these incredible mud floods?
It would explain Thor, right?
Yeah. And, so nobody knows about these mud floods. Well, they know about soil liquefaction, but there's a school of thought that says it happens on a cyclical basis, maybe every 250 years, maybe every 1,000 years. Or there's another camp that says soil liquefaction is man-made. It can be ignited. And there's if your listeners follow Michael Cremo in Forbidden Archaeology, he'll take you through scenario and discovery after scenario and discovery of reputable, schooled, very talented archaeologists who have discovered something in the United States that is at a level that means it has to be 15,000 years old. They lose their jobs. Something that's 50,000 years old, they lose their jobs because they report. Something that's 250,000 years old in Texas, that's undeniably, because of the level it's at in the earth, it has to be that age. And these people are just humiliated. But there's so much evidence for mud floods, which is why you see buildings that go down into the ground at a level that doesn't make any sense. The entrance to the White House, if you look at photographs, and they're on the internet, that show the deep levels in the original entrance to the White House, as opposed to the one that they make and show you today. These aren't earlier edifices. They're the same buildings, but refreshed because they were covered in mud. And the earliest picture of all these edifices, there's no people. And the photos that do show some people, respectfully, they're primitive. They're dressed. They have, in really simple, basic clothes. They have horses and rudimentary carriages. It is not a culture that would have made that cathedral or that Arc de Triomphe. We know what they made. We can see their homes and we can see their buildings, and they're humble. Once you start to look at these things with those sorts of eyes, then you can't really unsee it.
So are you saying that these items were made because someone was able to leverage the mud floods to move large pieces of the materials needed to build something like the Arc de Triomphe? Or are you suggesting that they were built much earlier, and just because we can detect the difference in the type of soils from the geological layers, that we can tell how old they were, because we generally we can tell by measuring the regular sediment versus the mud flood level of sediment. We can measure the time difference between the two, and so we can go back and go back to 50,000 years, as you pointed out, and whether it's the Viracochas or the demigods or the Anunnaki or whomever, the Atlanteans, somebody much older built it, and they knew how to leverage that kind of technology or harmonics without the chaos of a flood, or they could control the chaos? Is that sort of where we're going?
Well, where we're going is that there was a race of humans, and our ancestors, no doubt, that had knowledge and the ability to harness free energy, and they created buildings, and we see them with antennas, we see them with cathedrals, but they're cathedrals and the rose windows. If you look at a rose window, a classic, say, European cathedral, but same in the States, it has the same kind of design in the rose window. That's just like a snowflake. It's just like a molecule of water. And what is surrounding the Earth, and this is going to come out, guys. I've been talking about this for a couple of years, and I'm just putting pen to paper on it. I'm not the first to have spoken about it. Is the firmament. The second day of creation, God created the firmament to separate the watery abyss from beyond, and then create a dry earth below. Every single culture talks about this. Enoch went and saw it. Admiral Byrd went and saw it. And the structures that this race built were able to harness, electricity, free natural electricity. You look at photos from Chicago, from Paris, of the World's Fair. Everything is lit up. There was no electricity then. Everything is lit up. And again, once you see that, you really can't unsee it. So the mud flood was somebody's way of destroying that race and destroying and altering. So a lot of these buildings are still here, but they've been decommissioned, if you will. Their ability to harness free energy is no longer there. We have star stations. Google star stations, and you'll see these incredible, they're called forts, really. They're shaped like a star. They're on the ground. They're several acres in diameter. And they were all about harnessing, and water was involved. Of course it was. They were all on tributaries and lakes and rivers to harness electricity. Arguably, the pyramids were the same sort of thing. But the mud flood, to the best of everyone's ability, who's just getting their heads around this reality, was intentionally or accidentally levied against this race. Now, one of the other things that's really interesting, and I'm just going to stop and ask Jeff. I'm in my office here in London, but in my other room, for some reason, the television has turned itself on. Can you hear it, or should I go turn it off?
I don't hear it, so it's fine. So unless it's bothering you, we're cool.
It's probably the free energy being inspired from.
I know, right? I mean, someone's sending you a signal. That's either that stay away or that you're onto something. Well, it could be either. That could be the same message. But maybe it could be divine affirmation, or it could be a warning.
So it's the early 19th century. There's been a reset. It appears to have been in part a mud flood. Go and look at all these early photographs, and you see cities with glorious structures that are empty, the buildings covered in mud. You see people removing the mud, and you see people who don't appear to have the ability to have created them in the first place. But what else do you see? What did Charles Dickens write about?
The best of times and the worst of times.
What's that?
Urchins? I don't know.
Orphans.
Yep.
And you have at all the world's fairs and all the regional sort of fun fairs, for lack of a better term, incubation centers. And people pay. You can Google this, and it's called, wait for it, Cabbage Patch.
Oh, no.
Why were people paying a lot of money to go into a room full of dozens and dozens and dozens of incubators with small babies?
I don't know, but if you pull out Teddy Bixpin on me, I'm going to get really scared.
And so you have this phenomenon of babies being mass produced. They're all orphans. There's no parents in sight. And people are flocking to see them and looking at them with absolute wonder. And there's postcards and photos. Google it, you'll see it, Cabbage Patch. And what do you see in some of the photos shortly thereafter is these incredible factories with big, scary, I've worked in a factory before, big, scary equipment being operated by kids.
Yeah.
5 or 6 or 7 years old. Where are the adults? Where are the parents? Why are kids working this complicated factory machinery?
So what you're suggesting is that there was a reset about 120 some odd years ago, or around that time period, where there were floods that wiped out a generation or more of adults, which would encompass several generations. There were some survivors. Children either survived or the technology survived to manufacture children, and that's what we are now. We're the descendants of those, and somehow that is related to Tartarian technology.
Yes, and listen, it sounds absolutely ridiculous. I know it does.
Well, this is Garden of Doom, so that's okay. I mean,
to kind of get myself in the zone for this discussion, there's a particular person, and I'll send you the details, and you can maybe post it on your site. A 5-hour video of 5 hours of visuals.
Wow.
Of what we're talking about now. And each of these subjects, Cabbage Patch, mud flood, the architectures, how cathedrals weren't religious structures. They were structures to harness the energy. And they were power plants. They were cathodes, not cathedrals.
Well, that's interesting. That's what a lot of people say about the various pyramids. That they're not, whether you believe in ley lines or not really doesn't matter, because they were there to harness energy, and the energy, came from above. But of course, there's the Hermetic principle, as above, so below. So there would be energy from both sides. And of course, whether you believe in ley lines or not, the Earth has energy. I mean, we've got molten cores. There's plate tectonics. There might be the crustal displacement. We have a polarity that's shifting right now, as it does, routinely every, few decades to a few hundred years. So, I mean, obviously the Earth has energy. I mean, there's gravity, there's, all these other fine things that exist. So it's not just these cathedrals. That's what there are. And by people, I mean, I guess, Cliff Dunning unearthed ancients, Graham Hancock. I'm sure Randall Carlson has talked about it. There's been lots who've said these are all power plants or energy harnessers, which in essence are the same thing. They're, an artificial structure to acquire energy. Whether they manufacture it or harness it probably doesn't really matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so a cathedral is not a religious structure. It might be today. I respect that. You'll see images of old buildings in early San Francisco right after the gold rush. Photography has just been invented, and there's crescent moons on the buildings. Now, Islam didn't adopt the crescent moon as a symbol until the 19th century. Those images and crosses weren't religious symbols then. They were part of the material and structure that would help harness this energy. So a cathedral was not a cathedral. a castle was not a castle, a moat was not a moat, a fort was not a fort, it was a starved fort. A government building was not a government building that was built 100 years ago. For Tartaria, it's something that existed much longer ago. And there's some good examples of, there's a photograph of a building, I think it's in Florence, and it has Roman numerals for the date. And the date is 810. So if there's a photo taken of that, it has to be sort of from like 1850 onwards. And the Roman numerals say 810. I might be wrong about the specifics, but the truth of this example is authentic. That same building exists today, of course it does, but they put another Roman numeral on the front of it, which makes it constructed sort of like 1932 or something, hiding the fact that it was a much more ancient structure. And yeah, that's the essence of Tartaria is, Google it. You'll hear lots of people really taking the Mickey, as they say in the UK, out of it. But look at who these sources are. They're the same sources who've been telling you vaccines are safe. They're the same sources who've been telling you get your fourth booster. Look at what's come to reality now. All these people, are bought and sold and part of the same cabal. And it, for me, makes me beg the question, yet Rockefeller was really instrumental in creating the education courses and books and content that continues to be taught today. The victors are the ones who decide the story, his story. But who is he?
So Tartaria, it's less of a place than it is a movement, and a movement that still exists today and has information and has been utilizing it and then sort of erasing the carbon evidence, but leaving behind the physical evidence because you can't get rid of your power plants, basically, and then replacing the population with new, sort of like Invasion of the Body Snatcher style with new pods. But Tartaria had to have an origin. So, is it actually of Asian, Eurasian origin? Obviously the continents wouldn't have had the same names. Maybe they weren't even in the same place then, for all I know. But are we talking 50,000 years ago? Are we talking about 2 million? You said they're human, so Homo sapiens were, I think as we know it is 300,000 years, but that doesn't mean that that's correct. And that keeps getting moved back. And, and there's no rule out there that says that Homo sapiens had to be the only Homo something that was intelligent, or period. There was, the Earth's old. And there's plenty of cultures that have the 5 ages of man. There's the 5 root cultures that Luke spoke about, but the Mayans have the 5 ages of man. A lot of the First Nations have 5 ages of man. The Egyptian dynasties and the Sumerian royal houses went back 400,000 years. I think the Sumerians it was 432,000. I don't remember exactly why I remember that, but it had something to do with Nibiru and the divine year was 3,600 years, and with the math, 432,000 was significant because everything ends up being math and symmetry, which is in essence geometry, which is what you're saying. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit back, so bring me back, but I think the original question is, when does Tartaria date back to, and was it ever a place, or was it always sort of a movement, a philosophy, a control mechanism?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the audience might be frustrated by the lack of clarity on the answer. There definitely are old maps and history references to Tartaria and Tartarian culture existing in the parts of the world that we've discussed. over by the Caspian Sea, China, Russia, that part of Siberia, that part of the world. But it appears to have been a global phenomena because there's buildings with architecture that absolutely defies the ability. I mean, I have a home in Istanbul, and I marvel at Sinan, who created, 200 or 300 of the most incredible mosque. These structures, just jaw-dropping. The precision is unbelievable. And he existed when? Hundreds of years ago? Okay, and you believe it because you think, isn't that wonderful? That's amazing. But you just have to stop and realize there's no way in hell that anyone could have produced those sorts of things with what was available to them at the time. Just look at the people of that time. And I'm not talking about aliens coming in with spaceships and doing this. I'm saying the Earth is millions of years old. I say millions of years old of habitation. And there have been many, many races and many cultures on the planet and beneath it. And listen to our previous conversations about the inner Earth. We are in the inner Earth because the firmament is above us, and that's made of water. Now, hold that thought just for a second. The guy who did Blue Planet, Richard Attenborough, the guy who made the documentary, is a world famous documentary maker for underwater stuff. And after Blue Planet came out, he was doing the Mike Degree, or something like that. And you can Google this on YouTube. And he's talking about the fact that they're in a submarine, the bottom of the ocean, and all of a sudden they hit the bottom, but it's not like they hit the floor. They hit a lake. And they were bouncing off a lake, and they knew it was a lake because there were kind of like little waves on it, and there were eels on it. And he said it was so super saline and dense that the submarine he was in just bounced off of it.
Sounds like the Kong movie, Kong versus Godzilla, where Kong lived in a hollow earth, or they went to a hollow earth to find Kong's ancestors, and the gravity sort of inverted. Also, it sounds a little bit like my favorite book, The Descent, which had all these cisterns and underground lakes and oceans, and they had a race called the Homo hadalis for Hadals, as they're from Hades. So that's a great book. If anyone likes horror, but combined with sort of mythological and theological, all mixed into one, that's a terrific book by a guy named Jeff Long. Who's a jerk? If you're listening, Jeff, I've been trying to reach you and you never respond to me. And I know you're not writing anything. Anyway, enough about my little book.
Well, I love all that stuff. So I've just written that down. I'm going to make a note to seek that out.
Yeah. And there is a movie based on it, but don't watch the movie and think it's a substitute. It's a good movie, but it's not the same thing.
Well, I mean, so hold this thought. This guy has found this watery substance at the bottom of the ocean that appears to be impenetrable. Now, NASA claims it's been to the moon. That's 240,000 miles above Earth.
Right.
But the Van Allen belt, you can't get past it. And Van Allen was doing Operation Fishbowl. But it wasn't until, what was it? It was 2014, I think, that the civilian aviation society, and forgive me, I can't think of their name, civilian space exploration, sent a rocket up with a camera on it. And it's on YouTube. Google this. Civilian space exploration. This is 2014. The rocket goes up, and it goes up and up and up and up and up and up. And when it gets to 70 miles, it hits something really soft. It doesn't explode. It just sticks. And you watch. And after about a minute and a half, falls back to hit the firmament, which is made of water. And, there's the Van Allen belt, and Van Allen was setting off nuclear explosions in Operation Fishbowl at the top of the atmosphere, trying to break through the firmament.
So is that what the Van Allen belt is, sort of where the atmosphere ends and the firmament begins?
Exactly. And, so why do NASA rockets go up and arch? Why do they look as though it's a boat on the water with water flying? Well, it is, because they're hitting the top of the firmament. And Obama in 2010 said that, he wants to revitalize NASA because the goal is to reach low Earth orbit. Well, NASA says that's 100,000 miles. The moon is 240,000 miles. So are you telling us you've never been to the moon then?
Well, yeah. I mean, satellites are supposed to be at 22,000 miles, right? Isn't that well within low Earth orbit, satellites?
Yeah, and I encourage people to go watch the Truman Show, because that not only is allegorical for the fact that we're living in a bubble, but in the final scene, you have Ed Harris, who's the director. He's sitting looking at his iPad or something. There's a desk in front of him that's flat, and it has a circular globe over it. And it's, the elite have their way of kind of communicating what's real, and it's the firmament. So it just humor me to say it. If there's a watery substance that goes above us and below us, and we all know the power now and the magic and what is rendered from water, if you could harness that with frequency, which is what the Tartarians are said to have done. And I'm just exploring this like everyone else. And these incredible artifacts, these edifices, were able to produce electricity for world fairs, and it was a global phenomena. But now that's been destroyed intentionally or accidentally. And it's much more profitable to charge people for heat and electricity, which is what's going on now. And you think, a reset, no way, come on. Well, what have we just lived through? The Great Reset, Build Back Better. Look at the people who are telling us about that. They're all products of the World Economic Forum. That's all part of the cabal. I think it's over. I think the good guys have won. Call them the white hats. The head of the snake has been chopped off, and you're going to see some real revelations come out. Hopefully things like The Simpsons, who show a big bubble over the earth like the firmament. Everything else they've said has come true.
All right, well, let's say that you're correct about everything, and basically the earth is in, we're basically in an aquarium exhibit, either preserved by a divine being because we're special, or because we're some sort of lab experiment with a superior race that's out there in the vast sea, that the firmament is just our glass case. But so the Tartarians, they knew how to harness the energy, but did they have anything to do with the encasement or the creation, or were they just wise to it on their own? Did they figure out on their own, or were they tipped off? Were they, not in league, but were they in the confidence of whatever higher power created this, or did they just sort of stumble upon the technology and built it, but then it was destroyed by, I don't know, I'm not sure who, but I guess we can answer the first part, and then we can try to figure out who destroyed the culture that was Tartaria to the extent that they could.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. They would have been aware of it. I don't believe they would have been the creators of it. We're told with every theology that God, whoever that is, created it. So Genesis talks about it in detail. The Enuma Elish talks about it. Book of Job talks about it. Enoch spoke about it. It goes on and on. Early Hebrew.
Everything talks about the Chinese, the Vedic culture from India. You name it. Everyone talks about. Even Greek and Norse mythology. If sometimes there's something like a giant in space, or a cow, or someone gets sacrificed and cut up. But there's always, from a void comes the sky and the earth, or the and then the earth is sometimes divided by land and water, but there's the sky and the earth is mostly water.
And exactly, and if you picture, I mean, just humor me a little bit more, a little bit longer. If you have a snow globe, say it's on a flat surface, or I'm not going to get into the flat Earth discussion because I don't think it's round. I don't think it's flat. But if you have a snow globe,
if you do know a flat Earth person, I would love to have them on the show to hear all of it. But yeah, I know. I've actually heard your firmament presentation, so I know that you think it's more like oblong. It's more like a oval.
But there are with the Great Reset that happened last time, if that was the early 19th century, if that was the last one, they weren't able, apparently, to clean up all of the old maps and all the old things that have surfaced over the decades. And some of those maps show the Earth encircled by an ice wall. And beyond the ice wall, by the way, an entrance to that exit of the ice wall is in Antarctica, the only place on the planet that every nation agrees you cannot go there, are other continents. And Admiral Byrd, the most decorated American military person in history, Google it on YouTube. There he is saying, well, yeah, just beyond Antarctica is a continent bigger than the United States that's never been explored. That's just one of them. And if you look at the names of them, it's like Lemura, Atlantis, Thule. They're all the places from mythology.
All the who's who. There's the names right there. And that's... I remember the Admiral Byrd. Sorry, and didn't he say that he saw like a mastodon or a woolly mammoth or something as well?
Yeah, and that's so interesting. He saw, he's in his plane. He kept a diary. It got published after his death because they really came down on him. He finished his expedition to Antarctica and said, we are going to be attacked from either pole, from crafts far superior to ours. And then, boom, 4 months later, Roswell happens. A week later, the DOD is created. A week after that, the CIA is created. and he was right. But to your point, in his diary, he says, all of a sudden, there's green land down below. It's all green and warm. Well, I'm in the polar cap. How can that be? And then he sees a mammoth, which Jules Verne writes about in Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Sure,
there was a mammoth inside the Earth.
He also wrote about, before you got there, there was caves full of crystals, and they found them at least in one place in Mexico, these caverns full of gigantic crystals.
Yeah, no, exactly. So Byrd said he saw this crystalline city, and planes with swastikas on them. Now that we all know that swastikas are a sacred symbol predating the Nazi era, took over the control of his plane and landed him. He met with like the ruler of the inner earth and told him very poignantly that in the time when your world has been destroyed, and it will be destroyed, we will be here. We will come back. We will help you restore it. And we've preserved the history of arts and sciences for that purpose. And that's supposed to be, interestingly enough, 2029, 2030. And listeners should Google Agenda 230. Because
230 or 2030?
2030. Yeah. Agenda 2030. It was Agenda 2023. They changed it to Agenda 2030. And it's not pleasant. It's a real concerted effort by the global elite to orchestrate a depopulation. In the UK, we now have, because of this, forgive me, I don't, I don't mean to trigger anyone when I say I personally believe that global warming is complete bollocks. Look at the people who are promoting it, same people who are promoting COVID. And well, why would you promote global warming? What could possibly be the motivation for that? Well, we now have 15-minute cities. And I'm telling you, in the UK, they're not having it. They are vandalizing the what out of these devices that stop people from leaving their neighborhoods and film them when they do leave. They're destroying the cameras. They're taking down the barriers. They're not having it. And no one's asked, do you want a 15-minute city? Do you want to be confined to an open air concentration camp? No, they're just enforcing it because of global warming. And, that's part of the Agenda 230. And 230 is when Byrd was told that these people would come back to save us.
Now, you said way back when we first started, you said that this race was that the buildings were built to a scale larger than current day humans. So do you think that this is related at all to legends of giants? I mean, every culture has, Finn Balor or Finn McCool was a giant like Hercules and built this. Merlin used giants to build Stonehenge. In all through Mesoamerica and South America, the giants built these things, and the Nephilim, of course, the giants of old. In Greek mythology, you had the Titans, but you also had another race sort of contemporary with the Olympians, maybe even just before them, because they came from the blood of the castrated Kronos, I guess. When Aphrodite came from his the sea foam and his semen, the giants came from the blood. I guess the rest of the Olympians were still stuck inside Rhea at the time. Anyway, I don't know it all, but there was another race called the Giants that were akin to the gods, but not quite the gods. Do you think that maybe that's where some of these legends come from? That it was these Tartarians that actually were of a larger stature? Boy, after all that buildup, you go, nah, they were just 6 foot tall.
No, that's a great question, because you look at the cathedrals. I've been in Russia. I used to go there on business a lot, and I'd always explore when I went there. And the cathedrals have, and you've seen the photos, and I'm sure you've been to places that have these kind of doors where they're 100 feet high.
Yeah.
And there's keys to the doors. The keys themselves are 2 or 3 feet long, and the keyhole is about 50 feet in the air. So is it symbolic of, respectfully, the Almighty, the Creator, having an abode like this? Or is it something more practical, like that was the size of the people who went there?
So you think that maybe the Tartarians, or not maybe, you're saying the Tartarians were enormous?
Well, we don't know. We don't know. But some of these cathedrals, some of these just buildings, like old, what appear to be train stations, old town halls. That's a good example. They have huge doorways, and so one, there's no history of its construction that is credible. And just look at the technology and look at the people who lived at that time, and you can't get your head around it. For me, I could explain and be happy with the pyramids being built by people of that era, pulling rocks up and using water and using rollers to do that, before I could get my head around how the people of Paris could have built the Arc de Triomphe. So we don't know. And the discussion around this is it's 2 or 3 years old. It's not any older than that. It's just, I think it's part of the Great Awakening. They attempted the Great Reset, and now all of a sudden the Great Awakening is happening, and we're seeing things so differently. The fog is lifted and the veil is lifted, and now it's like Are you kidding me?
So, does the word Tartaria? I mean, is it just a word we use now to describe it? Because generally, the nomadic steppe tribes known as the Tartars live generally in the vicinity, or are they called that because there was a Tartarian culture in the vicinity, or completely where they live, and that's just their ancestors or their ancestors? Carry the lore, the legend, the history of the Tartarian peoples.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Jeff. And forgive me for sounding jaded, but I don't believe anything historically that's been taught to us. It's all his story.
Well, who is he? I mean,
who is he? We said we'd come back to that.
Right. Well, I guess the answer is you just think that the Tartarian isn't an ancient word. We're just using the word now because of the region.
Yeah, and I think the Tartarian, the reality of Tartaria, has been written in his story to be a culture that existed, but they were kind of a nomad culture that existed in Asia and parts of Russia and the Caspian Sea. No big deal. Whereas in reality, it appears to have been a global culture that had the ability to create incredible edifices that were designed to harness the wonders of nature, such as free energy and many other things in terms of the healing properties of water, which we haven't even spoken about, and all facets of energy and heating and that sort of thing. So I would encourage anybody who's been the littlest bit, even like, I think that's rubbish, I'm going to go take a look. Please go to Telegram. Please go to Rumble and look there. Also look at the conventional sources, but they protest a bit too much. And here, let me just, I'm looking here for a quote I had saved, and will I be able to find it? This is from Bloomberg. Now, Bloomberg, if you've been tracking on the alternative channels, is bought and sold. It's a mouthpiece of the cabal. So Zach Mortiz, writing for Bloomberg, believes the theory of Tartaria reflects a cultural discontent with modernism and a supposition that traditional styles are inherently good and modern styles are bad. He describes the theory as the QAnon of architecture.
So it's directly tied to architecture. But I mean, no offense to Mr. Mortiz and his writing or his opinions, but come on, the name Mortiz is too close to mortis. I mean, it's which is like Latin for death, right?
Yeah, and I wish I had some conspiracy theories to share with your listeners, but I've run out of them because they've all come.
No, I mean, I think you hit them all, but but except for the last one, we keep saying his story. I mean, of course, that's an English word. I don't know how old it goes back, but I guess that could be influenced by, a group that's this powerful. They can shape the language so that the common word just fits with the common language, and they could have meant the same thing just in a different language later. But who is he? Who is him? Who is this? Who is this? The leader? Who's the guy?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. I don't think there probably are people who know. I don't. My opinion is that we have been governed and pretty much brainwashed into not seeing the fact that we've been governed by a global cabal.
But do we have? Is there a name from mythos or logos? Is it Azazel? Is it Iblis? Is it Satan?
Well, yes. And this global cabal exists to serve a satanic god. If you use those words in the same sentence. So, for lack of a better term, Satan.
That's fine. Listen, I understand that every religious system has their own name for a god of chaos or evil. And it's not always evil. In some cases, chaos and order, they go together. One can't be without the other. But whatever that size, the personification of chaos or the personification of evil, that's what it is. Satan's probably the most commonly used word.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Specifically, I would say Baal.
Oh, oh my!
And
nice Baal. Okay, now,
yeah. That's just my opinion, and connecting the dots. But things are moving really quickly, and my I you have to hold out the thought that you could be wrong, and you're going to change your opinion. You're going to evolve it. You're going to realize that you had an immature view on something because you didn't have all the evidence, and you have to evolve. But you're asking me today, and what is it? The 23rd of March, 2023. I think his story was that written in honor or dishonor of Baal.
Okay. All right. Last question, and I'm going to let you promote whatever it is that you'd like to promote that you didn't already, or repeat yourself. But okay, what do we do? If someone does the research and comes to the conclusion that you are correct, or they want to hedge their bets, it's like one of those Pascalian deals where you're like, if I do nothing, I'm in trouble. If I do something, I might be able, do a lot of good. So what does one do to protect themselves from this?
I think we really have to trust our intuitions and realize that we've had a lifetime and many generations of being misled. And I think we owe it to ourselves when we see the world events all saying, look over here, look over here, look over here, Russia, Ukraine, look the other way. Because the other direction is where it's really happening. And there's so many examples of that. It's not true.
So put Occam's razor into a mirror.
Yeah, just question everything, and I think for those who are listening who have really struggled with these audacious propositions and theories, just take a really close look at NASA. Take a really close look at the phone call Nixon made to the moon. I mean, they've lost the technology. We can't do it anymore. Lost all the footage. You have all the astronauts with stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and they all have pretty much said, it's all on YouTube, in their own words, it never happened. So if you can lie about something so unbelievable in our lifetime, just think about the lies that have been told before the internet, when you couldn't research and prove that this stuff was just silliness.
Yeah, but what do you do? Do you pack your belongings? Find like an empty patch in the Yukon and live off the land and hope that it'll pass you by, or do you? I know that a lot of people talk about Tartaria. They're very interested in, getting heavy metals and they're excited about cryptocurrency. I'm not so sure anymore, but, anything to sort of not tie them to be having to survive based on current government ruled society. So are there steps that people could take that wouldn't land them in, federal or whatever their equivalent state or nation's prison is, but they can protect themselves and hedge their bets but still be able to live in the, in the developed world, but still have some protection when this should happen?
I went to all the big 40,000 people marches and protests during lockdown. I was in Trafalgar Square running from the police for my life. And I was there next to David Icke when he was giving this incredible speech, 50,000 people. and he was asked the question, what do we do? Like you just asked. And he said, listen, there's probably a couple hundred of these psychopaths who are controlling the planet. You can fit them into one room. There's 8 billion of us. I think I can see a way out of here.
Okay.
15-minute cities in the UK. You can't leave your 15-minute radius. You can't enter. You can't leave. Sorry. They're destroying those barriers, ripping them to shreds. It's not on the news. You'll find it on Telegram. You'll see the footage of the people destroying the cameras, destroying the barriers. We just have to say no.
Well, you're in Britain. Have you seen it yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's fantastic. These people are heroes. And it's what it takes, because this government, I say that collectively, worldwide, is not they should exist to serve us, and they don't. It's not even a democracy anymore. So it's time, I think, for a bit of revolution.
Okay. Well, that is a very Garden of Doom place to end the content portion of our show. You're on for The Simpsons and time travel and anything Simpsons to do with esoteric, and you're still not off the hook for Peacock. And if Bruce Fenton doesn't book a date, then I may have to call upon you at some point for all things Antarctica, which is a fun time.
Oh yeah.
But,
please. That'd be great.
Don't say please, because I'll bug you and you'll be busy, and then I try to only bug people like twice a year, something like that. But Bruce was going to do Antarctica, then he's like, "Oh, I'm so busy." But then I saw him tweeting all the time, and so I'm like, "Bruce, it looks like you're out of your shell now." He's like, "You're right, we should put it in the books, but we still haven't." So Bruce, if you're listening, I hope you are. Hit me up. At least if you're not doing it for me, do it for Andrew, because like I'm already giving him jobs, and he already has jobs that pay him and stuff. So anyway, enough about that. Andrew, tell people where they can find you, how they can support you, how they can learn more about you. I know that you're writing a book. I can't recall if you've written ones in the past, but you're all over the place. So I'm sure there's tons of ways that they can follow your work and support you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, andrewgough.com is my website. I don't have any products. I don't have anything I'm selling.
Hair care? Your hair is very nice.
I'm looking to start to do tours. I'm going to do a tour of Malta, which is an amazing ancient place, and Turkey, and a sort of goddess bee themed tour of Egypt. So those are all things in the works. Be on the lookout for those. I hope you can join me.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Lots of stuff. Yeah. So definitely follow Andrew with that. Can't thank him enough. Folks, thank you for listening to Garden of Doom. This was a very Garden of Doomy one. I mean, we have maybe 7 years, and hopefully some of you will be in their survival, and hopefully I'll be one of the 144,000 designated, ruling, the new ruling elite, but on the righteous side, because, I'm me, and I'm swell. Anyway, thank you for listening, Garden of Doom. Please let your friends know. Please give us a 5-star rating and a review. But more important than anything else, subscribe, download, listen, and refer to friends. And now, folks, you know about my tech challenges. You don't want to hear about it again. But I am going to try to do an outro song this time. Last time I did an intro song, it was a disaster, but I'm going to try. So here we go.